Bill, you had something that you wanted to run through today. So do you want to kind of like introduce that topic and just kind of take us through what you had in mind?
Yeah, sure. So I know that we can't play our campaign today, but I thought that we've had multiple discussions, and plus on the game I had multiple posts about how to assist in the different aspects of character creation, and we've talked about how we do it, and like each of us have our own theory, and there's no wrong method as long as you do it how you like. I thought I have to create a character for the campaign, and I thought it would be a cool um, behind the scenes look, or not really behind the scenes look, is to go one by one through the mechanics of making a character that we've talked about or that we've posted about, and link them all together. So the mechanics of making a character, how you do your backstory, how you tie it to the actual the realm and the world and the story that we are making together, the world, how to make those knives, how to calculate all of the actual crunchy number stuff, and we'll do it in real time and not just theoretically. I will show it to you, and we'll talk through each of the steps, starting from how I make a character from the very first step to final character creation. And then, even since this is a higher level campaign, I'll have to level up the character, so then we can go through the steps of, okay, I created a level 1 character, immediately I'm gonna have to level them up to level 5 to be on par with you guys. So these are the steps of how we're going to level up the character, and then we can do that crunchy number stuff together. And I thought it'd be a nice summary of all of the discussions and all of the techniques that we've talked about before in character creation, and so you can see it or in action, and then and then we can have a discussion about, this is how I do it, but there's no wrong way. We talked about it, and then because this is a world that we all contribute to, I thought it'd be very cool if this character, you guys could give advice, because like I said, I worry about the mechanics afterwards based on my idea of who the character is. And so I thought it'd be fun that we could make like a character, a communal. And so, like, what recommendations do you have, or what feats you think that he would use?
Like some Mary Poppins shit going on.
Yeah, exactly. Based on like the character that I have in my head, like, these are the things that are important to him. This is where he comes from. This is his background. Like, do you think this feat would make sense? Like, because I don't worry about like mechanically which one would be the most advantageous, like I said. So I think that that'd be cool. I have all the books that I'd need here. I have a PDF character creation sheet that you can download from Wizards on their website for free. It's the only way that I do a character creation.
Digital
is just how it's the way. So yeah. I thought that'd be very cool. I don't know how long that would take. I don't know if you wanted to do it along, if you wanted to have like a screen share, for the.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. I guess because Eric's offline, what I could do is I can. If you pull up, what will you be screen sharing from?
A PDF. I'd be like, we can go through the actual character creation sheet, and then we can go through one by one each of the blocks, and then we'll fill it in as we go. And I mean, like, if you wanted to do it, because I mean, you have the same PDF sheet that I use. And
yeah, so I guess I could do that. I could see if I could just like pop it into our feed, or maybe set up a different like channel that's like conducive to showing it. I could also do it in post. Like, you could do it, or if you want, while you're doing it, if you want, I don't know if you have the capability to just do a simple like screen record of the PDF as you're manipulating it.
I have absolutely no idea. I'm sure, I don't think that I can, but it would, I mean, the manipulating is just like when we talk about each block, I will, because it's just blocks, and I'll say like, okay, so this is the block that we're going to go do now. And then we'll talk about it, and then we'll fill it in once we have the decision.
Yeah, and let's just do that, because then we can focus on the discussion. You can do it on the sheet there. Let's just do it that way.
Yeah, so if you wanted to follow along, just have a PDF sheet, and I'll tell you exactly which sheet we're talking about, and then we'll fill it in and say, okay, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, that'll work.
So I think
yeah, I like that, especially too because like when I made wizard claws, that like the level I forgot to level them up at each one,
yeah.
and like there was stuff that I missed from that in terms of like adding spells to
Yeah,
the spell book.
not
Yeah.
starting at level 1 is way more complicated than it should be, I think.
Yeah, you don't make a level 5 character, you make a level 1 character and then level them up. That is how I've learned. Because if you try to make a level 5 character, you'll get burnt, and yeah, you'll forget. Like I forgot to give hit points just because, like, oh shit,
That's a big one.
this is their starting hit points. I'm like, I'm level 3. Why do I only have like 12? I'm like, oh, because I'm not level 3. I'm level 1 with a D10 and 2 con.
All right, so we'll call this a practical or like a practical guide to creating a character.
Yeah.
Walkthrough. So Bill, then take us off. What do you have in mind? Where do you want to start? Where do you start for creating a character?
So I normally start with who the character is, and what I want the character to be. So big scope for Aoa, I'm thinking about where they come from and and what they did previously. Like what was their? I start with their background because that leads to everything else. So my
Did you
thought for
have
this
certain? Sorry, I was going to ask if you had like a certain background in mind. Then
yeah, so I've already in my head I've made this character, but I haven't actually done all the crunchy like actual character creation just because most of the time when I make an NPC on the thing, they don't actually have to have stat blocks to them. They're just a name and then like a background. But with this character, I will need to have this because this is a character that may, things may happen, and you need to have for certain like characters that are. It's good to have an actual stat block and character sheet, even if they're an NPC, just because you don't want to be scrambling like, oh, they're in the fight now. Oh shit! Like, what damage do they do? Like, do they have feats? Like, they do, and so, I play like an NPC that is involved in fighting or combat or anything else that requires rolls should have a fully developed character sheet, and so that's what I'm going to do.
And so, like to give a little extra context, then you might actually be playing this character while you're also maybe DMing. Is that
yes?
And that's kind of why,
yeah,
we need to make sure it's a fully fleshed out character sheet, and not just an NPC where maybe you go like character sheet light sometimes.
Yes, exactly. Like an NPC with character sheet light, you may only need, especially if they're not not everybody is a adventurer. Like if they're just like an NPC stat block, like a villager, you have all that stuff made. Like this is how much health they have, this is the damage they do. But if your character is like an adventurer, they have a background, they have all this stuff, they're going to have all the abilities that the players do. And so like you don't want to try to like make it up as you go to like, okay, they'd have a fighter, so I'm going to give them a fighter, whatever, like just thinking about it when it's your turn to go. And so in general, if you're like, if your NPC is an actual like, it could be a character if somebody played him, but he's not. He just nobody's controlling him right now. Then he should have a full, character sheet. Like if you're going on an adventure with somebody and you just have like a sidekick who's just joining you, he should have a full character sheet.
So I'm dying to know about this character that you've got in your head.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start with the background. So he comes from, if we look at the map of Aoa.
I was going to say, I hope he comes from an area we've maybe not encountered a lot of people
that is
from.
Exactly why I'm going to have him. So he is coming from the Gorman Empire, which is the area, which is the desert. And that's what we know as the Gorman Empire. I think it's going to be fun to have more discussions with this character. Maybe the Gorman Empire is not what everybody thinks it is. We're going to start with that. And so to start the character of put him in the Gorman Empire, you kind of have to think about what is the Gorman Empire and like think of that that world as and that like culture, like what is important to them, like how would they live? Like how is that like is it militaristic? Is it you know autocratic, democratic? How would that because that would affect uh how he lives and how he acts. So in my head, the Gorman Empire is in a area of very limited resources. So really, the only way to have a successful like civilization and culture in an area of limited resources, like you could have a very unequal society where you have the haves and the have-nots, um, like the imperial houses in Dune. You know, you have the people that have all the water, and then the people that are just barely surviving. But I think it's more interesting to have a more of a communal society where the society and the uh, is more important than the individual. You know, it is almost like an ant colony in that it's a struggle to survive, and the only way to survive is to band together.
It's
And
the
so, like,
Fremen to the
it's
Dune Imperial houses.
it is exactly the Fremen. So that's kind of I think with all
I
the
know my Dune, motherfucker.
yeah, like so if Frank Herbert is good at certain things, he's really good at you know white savior complex because the best Fremen is a white person. But if you ignore white savior complex in Dune, like that's exactly the only two ways that you'd have it is like a like I'm not quite communist, but like a communal or a uh, a society where everything is shared, or a society where it's absolutely not, and the only way to survive is to steal from other people. And so, so that's what I think he's coming from. So that's his background. He was raised as the the greater good. You know, I as an individual, I'm not as important as um, society in general. That kind of that's the mindset that he has. I want him to be a fighter. Well, I want him to be a soldier, and so I was thinking about what class he should be. Because I want him to have served in the army in the Gorman Empire. So the Gorman Empire army is, it's an army where the individual isn't very important. So like World War II Soviet era, you know, where it's only about the community. It's like maybe not the best place to be a soldier because like it's
You're
not
just
the
in
safest.
a meat grinder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like you may be in a meat grinder. Or I don't think that they have like a Stalin over them who's just going to throw people at it. But it is like you are trained that like if you need to, it's like Spock, like the goods of the many outweigh the goods of the few type of like idealistic. Um, it sounds great, but then like when you're that guy who's the needs of the few, you're the guy in the front lines as a soldier. Like it becomes kind of scary. So the only way to survive is to uh, be completely in that mindset that like my life is not really important as long as I do what I need to do. So that's his mindset. So if we go through the classes, so that's his background. He's a soldier. If you go to uh, the background, you see that soldier is a really easy background to do, just because. Go to soldier background. It is on page 140 of the player's handbook. Um, so that's where I'm going to start on my actual character sheet. Is his background is going to be soldier. So if you look at the soldier, the first thing you're going to do is get the chunky stuff out of the way. So his skill proficiencies is athletics and intimidation. I usually like putting the skills of from the background before you put the skills from anything else, just because a lot of times you have options. Background gives you like these are the ones you're good at, and then the like your race and your class gives you options. Pick 5 of these 8. So if you start with those 5 of those 8 and then you get to your class or your background, then you may like, oh well, I already chose athletics, and this one is giving me athletics for free, so I don't have to go back and switch. So that's why I think it's better to start with the background put all the background information in first, because there's no options. It's the background is your background. That's before you became an adventurer. So that's the first thing that should go on your stat, is because that's how I feel and that's how I do it. So for background, athletics, intimidation. So I'm going to check those off. Real easy. Tool proficiency is a type of gaming set, and vehicles. So we can take that down in the other proficiencies. Is a gaming set, we'll just say probably dice, and then land vehicles. His equipment, you can put all this stuff down because it's just flavor equipment mostly, but you just copy that down into your items. I'm not going to take time to do that. So his specialty, you can, this is more flavor. It doesn't have any actual like effect on the character, but I think it'd be a cool thing to have to think about what kind of characters or specialties would be in an army where it's like a communal army, so it's not like not hierarchical. There's not like one like a Joseph Stalin they're leading. It's probably led by the elders, and then like you get assigned a soldier early on because of your skills and your talents. It's just kind of like an ant colony. Like you're a designated soldier. You are strong and you're tall. You will do best as a soldier, so that is what you are. But I don't think that there's a lot of variations of like jobs as a soldier. You're just a soldier. So I think that, his specialty is probably just infantry, because that's really all they have. The military rank, I want him to be like an old retired soldier, not quite retired, but there's not
So
really
how old are we
retirement.
talking here?
Yeah, well, I don't want like. I was also thinking in this story, like, if they're trying to have like the most, it's all about efficiency and survivability. So like, it would probably after a while, like you have all the skills of a soldier, but they'll just like replace. It's almost like a conscript service of like Israel, where like everybody is served. Who is a good soldier serves as a soldier for a little bit, but you may eventually not be needed to be a soldier, so they'll find a use for you afterwards with your skill set. So I was thinking he's probably like 40, which would be more interesting than making like an 18-year-old character. And so like a military rank, I think he would let's just say he was like a sergeant. I don't know what he wasn't a super high up. He wasn't a general. He was in it for a while, and then he kind of aged out or just rotated out. So he's not a soldier anymore, which is why you see him in your adventure. So the personality traits are that's why we needed the background of where he comes from. So I think if you look down the personality traits for soldier, the suggested traits, you can look through all of these. I think for him, face problems head on. A simple, direct solution is the best path to success. That's kind of like a good idea of a personality trait for him. We don't need to use those traits. We can use other traits. So I think that he is kind of he's lived in that communal society long enough that like he is convinced that is the only and best option to survive, and not just in a harsh environment, but every environment. He's idealistic, and he's just constantly shocked at the individuality and all that stuff of the rest of the world, not in the Gorman Empire. But I think that he's like stubborn and idealistic is definitely his personality trait, where he's one of those like, well, this shouldn't happen. Like, well, why are you going to do that? Like, it may look good for you, but think about the greater. He's kind of on his high horse and moralistic and that just from being in that the soldier and being constantly trained, right? You were in the military, that like people that kind of take that to heart. Some people you hear it all the time of like, oh, like honor, do sacrifice, all that stuff. And then you say like, oh, I understand why you're trying to say that, and I agree with most of it, but some people just take it and that becomes their whole character.
Yeah.
And so I think that's this guy, just because not he's almost like a North Korean soldier type, not in a bad way, but like in our way is really the only way. Any other way is wrong.
Very devout.
Very devout. Yes, idealistic and devout.
Okay,
so that'll
that's
be
the
his
background.
Yeah, so that's his background, and his ideal, of course, is the greater good. It is opposite of independence. It is, that is ideal. Then his bond is anybody that he serves with, or anybody from his community. He's a very communal person, so he's quick to form bonds with people, just because that's how you survive in his world. And then his flaw, of course, is part of his thought process of kind of being stubborn and refusing to refusing to see other options. And also, I think that he may be a little bit quick to endanger himself when it's not needed, just because he doesn't have like a self survival skill, because that wasn't ingrained in him. It was just ingrained that, like, you die. But as long as it's completely acceptable, as long as you did it doing something for the greater good, like the benefits of your sacrifice outweighs the negatives.
So that'll be an interesting thing for the party to navigate, like just with the interesting personality types, having a stubborn one that's willing to sacrifice. Like, no, don't do it. I'm gonna do it. Okay.
Exactly. That's what I thought would be fun, is because that's the opposite of everybody else, is that, like, I get claimed to sometimes be like purposely like devil's advocate, defiant of everybody's character, make you say that I make inefficient but ineffective characters, but I think it's just, I like that juxtaposition that, like, he's the opposite of Lord Wizard Claus, where Lord Wizard Claus is very, he will run away at the first sign of it, like kind of hide, like, not that he's a coward, but like,
it's a cat. That's what cats do.
He's a cat. He wants to survive. It's like, if the mission fails but he survives, it's a success, and for this character, if the mission fails and he survived, then he didn't try hard enough.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to have a variety of those personality types.
Yeah, and this is it when we start so this is the early interactions. You can always have character growth, or things happen, especially when somebody's stubborn and has a single mindset. So that would be it. So that's his background. We filled in a lot of those blanks, like all the character stuff, the personality traits, ideals, bonds, flaws, some of the skills, the equipment, the proficiencies, and some of equipment, like the basic stuff. And so after this, like, knowing what he was, like, what class would he be? And I think anybody has any suggestions? I think fighter was just the obvious option. There's not.
I'm curious what really, like, fighter obviously makes sense. I'm more curious about what subclass of fighter you had in mind, because that's where I have some thoughts.
Yes, please tell me your thoughts, because so we'll just put class as a fighter. We'll leave level we'll talk about that later. Also, race, I think just human, because this is human for the Gorman Empire, is easy, and also that's what normal, like, the mass of people in the Gorman Empire are human. It's a human civilization.
Makes sense.
But yeah, so that was where I need some recommendations. So I've looked through all of not all of them, but the ones that are the most interesting, and I've tried to see which one I think that he would work with. I know which ones that he wouldn't. But no, I have absolutely no idea. So please tell me what your thoughts are about his fighter subclass.
Well, just after hearing listening to what you said about just the Gorman Empire, the sense of community, the sense of duty and devotion, and this notion of self-sacrifice, samurai, like, immediately popped into my head as, like, that class is really built around that concept of like bolstering one's resolve to do incredible feats in battle. And then it's also like samurais go out of service, like they serve, and then maybe if they did work for some kind of feudal lord, might receive, like, exit service or exit honorably or something. So it kind of fits into the even if you take out like the Asian or Eastern influence from it, the notion of the class still kind of seems like it could be a fit for that the culture of the Gorman Empire.
Yeah, I think that is I was thinking that. I think that's a good call.
I've been wanting to play the samurai class for a while too, and since I probably won't have a
Yes.
chance to, I want to vicariously live through
Yeah,
you.
for sure. The samurai is definitely one of the more interesting, and that's definitely on my list. So I will go through. Do you have any? Well, let's just just state a lot of the fighting, the martial archetypes, as they're called, or the subclasses, for fighters. Um, so we have the champion, the battle master, the eldritch knight are from the player's handbook. That's the standard one. And then from Xanthars, you have the samurai, you have the cavalier, and then you have the arcane archer. There are others in other books, but I thought that it definitely had to be one of those 6, just
Yeah,
because the other ones
Cavalier
are.
would also fit too, huh?
Yeah, so cavalier was what I was thinking. Also, was between the two is cavalier. He definitely wouldn't be like a battle master, because it's like, oh, I'm better than him. Like, he's not an individual. And so, like, a battle master or a champion just doesn't seem.
That makes sense.
He's not like the hero, what is it, like Dota hero?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
so then
he's a little peon in Dota, the ones that just attack the tower and die. Yes.
well, so based on that, if he's not sort of like the protagonist in a sense, we'll kind of use that word loosely here, then maybe Cavalier makes more sense, because I feel like a samurai, they're usually like I thought they were usually more of like a leader, or maybe a samurai is just part of like a greater army, like a soldier.
Yeah, so he could have been like, what is he now? So he could have been not a cavalier when he was in the army, but he could have used those skills to now become a cavalier. So that's or a samurai. So
Right.
like, this isn't a samurai, doesn't have to be, like the samurai that we think of. Like,
Yeah.
if you look at like it's more about in pickle, like the fighting spirit, which I think you nailed it with why he would be a samurai. The cavalier is interesting, because I think that they go either way, but so we'll just have a vote at the end. I will tell you why I was thinking maybe cavalier also.
Yeah, I'd like to hear, because I could see both.
Yeah. So like cavalier, I was thinking not as like the knight who's riding it on a horse, but more of like in the Xanthar's Guide to Everything, they talk about they are guards of those, like it's very defensive. And that's
I want him
kind
to be
of
on a cat bus.
yeah.
I want him to fight
really.
from the back of a cat bus.
So I was thinking of how Gorman soldiers would fight, and if you just have a bunch of people and there's no individuality in the fight, you are fighting in a phalanx, basically, from like Roman. Like, that is absolutely how I saw them fighting, is a bunch of soldiers that look exactly the same, and it's just you become one. Your fighting unit is 30 people in a line with a shield and a spear and a sword, and it makes perfect sense for this character. And so a samurai doesn't have to have a katana. You could be a samurai with a shield and a spear. But I was thinking it was all about like, your job is to defend the guy next to you, because the guy next to you's job is to defend you, and that's a phalanx. That's how it fights. Is that it is very defensive based, and you are, yeah, like, so your job is to protect your shield doesn't protect you. Your shield protects the guy next to you, and the guy next to you's shield protects you.
That makes sense, because a samurai is more of like an artisan fighter. He's like a diplomat and also a traveler and a student and a poet.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe cavalier makes more sense after knowing more of the history and the like cultural like things that, like, because if they have this mindset, they fight this way. So there's like this cultural relevancy there.
Yeah, but I mean, there's no, like, a samurai could do that. It's all about like the fighting spirit and
Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
What
So
it because like Cavalier makes to me after hearing what you just said, Cavalier makes the most sense to me. But if he's not like a horsebound or like a mounted fighter, what if you just swapped out fighting spirit from samurai, the 3rd level feature,
Mhm.
for born to the saddle, the 3rd level cavalier feature?
Oh yeah.
And because like the fighting spirit makes sense in like a group defense sort of like
Mhm.
group hive mind battle situation, like
Yeah.
you I don't know, I'm kind of channeling like Spartan or 300 where everyone's like jacked and fighting together in this like synergistic like cohesive way.
Guess what? We can do that. I think that that's a brilliant concept because like he's not going to be mounted because they wouldn't have everybody mounted. When you have like the phalanx or a bunch of people, especially if like water is scarce, you're not
Yeah.
going to have everybody mounted. There's just not enough creatures or animals or horses or camels or some unnamed creature that only exists in Oa that we haven't decided yet. So I
One
think
of the
that's a cool concept, like to make your own um, uh, class, and it's just as long as it's a combination of things that exist, it's not overpowered.
it's one of the
Uh,
many perks of being the DM and creating your own PCs as
yeah,
well.
and I and
Yeah.
I never really have to worry about making my characters too overpowered because I don't do that. So
Well,
I
and
think
there's
I think
so
that that's a cool idea. I think that we could that I like the idea of starting with a cavalier and then maybe as you level up, like saying, "Oh, does this seem appropriate for his class or his fighting background? Maybe we can swap it out with something else." And we'll do that every time we level. Like when he gets a new feat, like does this make sense for what he would do? Like if he's really good at mounted combat and he's never fought on mounted before, how would he all of a sudden become excellent at
yeah.
mounted combat? So I
Speaking of
think you're right.
feats,
Yeah.
are you playing a variant human with the feat? And if so, what is it, and how does that
Yeah.
tie into your character?
Yes. So I am playing a variant human because that's the only way I play. Because feats
Variant or
are
bust.
yes, feats are absolutely the best option. If you're a human and you don't do the variant human, then you are missing out of character development. You could get more actual stats the other way, but who gives a shit? I will
Jump
tell
in
you right
feet
now that
first.
is I very rarely say that there's a wrong way to do things, but that is a wrong way to play a human because the option like the human is designed to be very variable. Like there's so many different types of humans. So giving them a feat is the way that like you differentiate yourself from, you know, all the different humans that are there because everybody's going to be a human. So
Especially early on in the game, like level
take,
1.
take a damn feat. So I think we can go to feats after this, knowing how he fights and what he does. Like he fights phalanx style. I think I'm going to put his um, uh, in his features because I'm just going to mention that his what do they call it? The martial archetype. I think we could call it a a phalanx or whatever.
Yeah.
What do you call somebody who's in a phalanx?
Like a phalanx fighter. Yeah, I mean,
Phalanx fighter.
but yeah, I what are phalanx fighters called? Yeah, because like that also helps you focus in on what feat would be appropriate. Like polearm master jumps to mind,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
athlete jumps to mind. Like there's a bunch
Yeah.
that could immediately jump to mind.
Yeah, for sure. Those are two that I actually was thinking. Yeah, so I think that's so we have his fighting
Hoplites.
hoplite, of course. So that is his fighting. He's a hoplite, which is very defensive, very like protect your neighbor more than yourself, which makes sense. So we're gonna have like a variant, which is just you can put hoplite and then in parentheses so you know that it is a cavalier, unmounted cavalier variant. Um, And so, like, just for later on, when you're like, "What the fuck is a hoplite?" You're like, "Oh, he's a cavalier, but he's unmounted." Um, and so, like, when you just to get an idea of what it is. So when you tell people or anything like, "Oh, I'm a hoplite," like people are like, "What the hell is that?" You're like, "Oh, it's a cavalier that doesn't uh,
Doesn't
ride anything.
ride.
Doesn't ride. He's a foot cavalier." So I think that's cool. Yeah. So what about Mark? We haven't really heard from you. Um, do you have any options? Do you have any recommendations on anything? Knowing now how this character is developing, as we were talking about him, you see that the character is developing, and kind of these choices are making
Yeah,
themselves
I'm gonna
really like
check
they're
out
becoming
the.
evident.
Yeah, they are like polearm master or whatever. Definitely jumped out at me.
Hmm.
I'd actually never seen those other 3 varieties of fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of
'Cause
glossed
I've only
over
ever looked at them
Cavalier. Yeah,
from
because
the
like
player's handbook, but I think Cavalier sounds really cool.
we never use mounted stuff, so I've
Yeah.
always just kind of glazed over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I originally was going to be a samurai for sure, just because I thought that would be very cool. And also the same thing of like, because when we're talking about like selfless service, Japan is like that type of mentality. You're right, where like the not, and it's not just like this community, but it's like the feudal lord. Like there's something greater than yourself, and like to die in service of that greater entity is honorable and good. And so I was definitely leading toward samurai, but then because I don't want to be on mounted, so like, oh, cavalier, I'm not mounted, garbage. But then I was looking at the individual things of cavalier, and it's mounted is only like a few things,
It
and I'm like,
is, yeah.
Yeah.
it's
Sentinel might be kind of cool and thematic.
Mhm.
Sentinel, I think, works
Master
really well
technique
with
to take advantage of enemy's guard.
Mhm.
works
So,
great with Polearm Master too.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were ones that I marked down that I was interested in too, because originally I chose something else.
Yeah.
I chose
Let's-
something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, Polearm Master Sentinel seems really good too.
Would you, Bill? Would you take a feat at level 4 as well?
Yeah, I would too. Because I think that when you're like level, like based on his age, it's more of experiences and not like getting actually more abilities. Like he's not that he's getting stronger. He is just, he's leveled
More
up 5
experience.
levels over probably 15 years of service. He's probably conscripted at like level 15 or at age 15. And so that's kind of how I see it. It's not like somebody who's innately amazing at it, and as he's fighting, he's getting stronger, he's getting smarter. He's not. He's just gaining feats. He's gaining experience that he's using. Oh, now I can do this. I've done this for enough. So that I would, but I think that you are right at the ones that I was looking at are the ones that you exactly named. So athlete is just an all around easy one. Kind of, it's not super interesting, but it would be appropriate that like if for a phalanx you're just carrying around heavy stuff, walking everywhere.
Yeah, because you need like at least 2 or 3 weapons plus your supplies.
Yeah,
and you're in the desert.
Yeah, so athlete makes sense, but it's not super interesting. So like I'll keep that on the back burner. That if nothing else fits, we can always put athlete in there.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, I also wonder too if it's okay if we can spend some gold and time in between these interludes to like train a feat, even though we're not okay.
Yeah, so I've talked
those
about
partial
how,
feats like we had talked about.
Yes, how giving partial feats, like because a feat usually has like 3 or 4 things, except if they're like that one thing is super super powerful. And so I am all for giving partial feats of just like like an athlete. Like let's just look at the things you get as an athlete. Increasing your dex or strength score by 1. I'm not going to give that out for free ever. Like it's just not. No.
Yeah, ASI is like a big deal. Not
going to happen. You only get that as a level, and I don't even think it's that important. Honestly, I don't think the raw ability scores are that important for a character. It's nice, but I don't really care that much. So for an athlete, when you're prone, standing up when he uses 5 feet instead of half your movement speed, that's something you could definitely, that's a kip up. That is how, if you train on doing that, you could probably do that pretty easy. Like that is something that an experienced fighter should probably be able to do, especially if you're in like heavy armor.
Yeah, or a soldier,
get up quickly. How do I get up quickly in this armor? Climbing doesn't have your speed. If you're skilled at climbing, that's an easy one. And then you can make a running long jump or running high jump after moving only 10 feet or 5 foot instead of 10 foot. Like that's something
Hoplite would definitely know how to do that.
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of things that the athlete looks at, and like behind the curtain, we're going to have 2 feats because I am going to take one at 4th level, so we can start thinking about what the second feat would be.
Yeah,
So
because it's like even
yeah.
just with having this character already feels like I know it's metagamey, but definitely feels like a gap in our party's makeup.
Which is why also I decided that that's because I could have made it anyone, but and knowing that like
Another bard.
yeah, knowing that Mark is your frontline fighter and he's a monk who has very little armor,
Yeah.
just yeah, it that was the whole. I was thinking about making a paladin because you also don't have a healer, and so I was when I first did this, I was like, oh, he'll be a paladin, and like he'll because he is paladins are also like zeal, and that's all he's about is you know um the fervor and zeal of fighting for the greater good. Like that is he's a paladin. But then I was like, he probably doesn't have any magic ability. And so how can you be a paladin without having without the magic part?
Right.
Like
Fighter makes sense. Fighter makes
yeah,
great
so that's
sense.
what I was thinking. Like I was back and forth between there. And if you guys thought you could see paladin, I was definitely willing to change it. That's why I was like, he's a soldier.
Fighters are tight.
It
Fighters
makes
are
more
cool.
sense.
Yeah.
I was also throwing around making him a healer subclass just because like when an army you're expected to like heal your own wounds because you're going to keep
Mhm.
and so maybe he could that's if he's going to train on something or if he has that he probably has a little bit of first aid just
Yeah.
from
Medicine.
the medicine skill
Field
just from
medicine,
being
yeah.
in the army for so long and like getting nicks and scratches and cuts and fucking up your feet from walking all that time. Like it's a skill that you learn. So
Yeah.
I was probably going to give him that skill no matter what. I don't think it's practical. If you look at the healer that you could in the middle of battle, you can use your healer's kit to heal people. I think that's he's already has like a shield and a sword. It's just impractical. So
Yeah.
healer would be.
I can make the argument of like field triage where it's like you stabilize someone.
Yes.
But yeah, you're pulling out your healer's kit and performing your action, doing such a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so with feats, circling back to feats,
For sure.
My personal selfish vote, just because I know it's a powerful combination that will help us, is for Sentinel Polar Master, but athlete makes a ton of sense. So
I think Sentinel makes a perfect sense. I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't know about Polearm Master.
Just like with Phalanx, that initial like shield and pike sort of, and then when they come in, then they pull out the swords and start the stabbing.
No, I will. That's the first thing I was thinking is that of Polearm Master. I definitely like Sentinel for the reason of that. That is the whole point. Is that you are just like people can't move around you. You are all about if people try like you're looking for the opportunity attack. That's the fact you're very defensive and you're really only attacking when somebody gives you the opportunity. Like you're not like a battle rager where you're running in swinging. You have your shield up and that's what you're waiting. You're waiting for somebody to try to attack somebody and then you poke them. Like
the advantage of the Phalanx is you've got 30 other opportunities all waiting to simultaneously
So
strike.
you are opportunity of attacking. You're waiting until you see that underbelly because he lifts his arm and then you stab the spear. So I think Phalanx I think Sentinel is excellent. That's super high up on my list. I will tell you, in my opinion, mechanically why I don't think Polearm Master works, because Polearm only works for glaive, which is two-handed, a halberd, which is two-handed, and a quarterstaff, which is what he doesn't use. He uses a spear, and Polearm Master does. We could easily say as a DM that Polearm Master works with spear because it's kind of
spears. While you were wielding a glaive, halberd, pike, quarterstaff, or spear.
Where are you reading it? I'm reading the
PHB 168.
Page 168.
Second bullet point.
Oh,
second line.
I see. Is this an old one? I have a PDF of it. Let me look at mine.
It's in both bullet points.
Give me a second.
Mark's got it in print, so
because I have I have it in print but I'm using a digital version that I found online. which I have no problem about downloading a digital version of a book that I've already paid for. I have it; it's right here. I have so many freaking of these books, but it's easier than carrying around a book that I downloaded a digital version of a book that I own. I think that's not a problem. Let me see. See, the one that I have says when you Polomaster, when you take the attack action and attack with only a glaive, halberd, or quarterstaff.
I guess the next step is to check which version, because they do publish updated.
Oh, is
books.
that a errata? Maybe. Let's see.
Yeah, because if you bought your book along like 5 years back and they've updated it since then, they do add, or they have added updates to the books.
Yeah,
throughout
let
the
me see.
years.
It's probably right. Let me see.
Where's the publication?
Polarmaster. A second sentence has been added to the first benefit. Quarter pass or steer. Yeah. Okay. So you're right.
Yeah, my book's from 2020.
Yeah. So my book is from 23rd. When did this come out? D&D, when it was called D&D Next. Yeah. When did D&D Next came out in 2012? So I probably bought mine in 2013.
I've
no
idea, but that's pretty old.
I need to download this errata. So I see now. So I think that you are right. I think that with the add of a spear, I think that's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, it totally makes sense, because he would be able to sit back, play defensive, and stop people from approaching the line.
Yep. All right. So that's what he's going to. Yeah. So that's what he's going to be. He's going to be a polearm master and sentinel. We can give them both.
And now we have the two features I mistakenly didn't take for myself.
Yeah. File. Let me download this errata right now, just so I have it. Let me look for fighters and see if there's any other ones that.
Yeah, it might be worth checking and updating your book.
Yeah, I need to. Yeah, because like I said, the one I have is. When was this made?
Yeah, you might get like 5 more HP or something. Yeah, in the new update.
Well,
2014. Mine was made in 2014.
Oh wow, that was close.
That's a good guess.
Yeah.
Well, for the sake of time and for me, who has to edit this episode, let's keep moving on and the character sheet.
Yeah. So don't worry about that. I'm just like, oh, this is cool. All right. So we have all of those things. So we'll put those in his, like, so we have the feats, we have his background, we have all that stuff. Now let's get to the actual part that most people start with, which is his stat blocks.
Yeah. And just as a shameless plug, if you go to +1togaming.com, we also have a whole episode and full-length post on picking your ability scores and some different methods on how to do that.
So I'm going to do the 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, 8.
And that's called a standard array, right?
Your standard array. Yes. It's I think that it makes it easier. The point build leads, I think, to a lot of min-maxing. And it works for some people. I don't think I like the fit, because you just figure out what his best trait is down to his worst trait, and then you just put them in order. So that is how I'm going to do it.
So where are you gonna, based on his personality? Because that's the one thing that I've learned from you and have tried to do more of in my games, of rolling in their, like, basing their ability scores off of their, like, the person and their, what they can, their physical and mental attributes.
So instead
of like min-maxing it.
Yes, exactly. So as I was saying earlier, I think he was selected to be a soldier based on his attributes. So I think that he is, like, as you know, a soldier you think is probably going to be high in strength and constitution. And I agree. I think those are going to be his two highest traits, or just because they selected somebody who's that to be a fighter. If you had higher other things, they would have chose him to do something else. And I think also they would select somebody who's not very, like, I wouldn't say smart. You don't want somebody questioning orders or anything like that.
Right. Like you want them maybe, like, I don't know if that would be intelligence or wisdom, of like the sort of like self-realization, self-autonomy.
Yeah, you want them to smart enough to realize what's going on in the battlefield, but you don't want them to question the orders that are given to them, or question the the worldview that he's been given and grown up.
But also intelligent enough to make like sound battle decisions too.
Yes.
Like,
so I that is a question I was going to relate to you. So what do you think is that more attributable to? So let's start.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up a character sheet just so I can see what falls under intelligence, and actually, I think it's on our post.
Yeah, it is on the post. So I'm gonna say for him, because he's older, his constitution is his highest score. He's not like a young buck anymore. He's 30. So just a 30-year-old is not as strong as a 22-year-old. It's just that is science. You start to lose muscle mass. That's how it works. Being in the army, that your push-up requirement goes up for a certain thing and then goes back down.
Yep.
And so that kind of tells you like what is the Army's push-up requirement at the highest age? And I think it's like upper 20s, like 23 or 26, 27.
Yeah, it's ridiculous when you get into your 50s. It's stupid.
Like
but I think so after looking at what falls under wisdom and intelligence, to me, wisdom makes a lot more sense to have the higher attribute. Animal handling, insight, medicine, perception, survival. All great skills for a soldier.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that makes a perfect sense. So I think he is. So we're going to do 16 or 15 for Constitution. We're going to do 14 for Strength. 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, 8. So then 13, should it be Wisdom or should it be Dexterity? I'm going to say Wisdom because he is 30. So it's his experiences. He's not as agile ninja. He's a 30-year-old, or maybe even, what did I say, 40, even 40-year-old.
I was saying, I guess a 37-year-old. I'm just like,
I know.
No, I meant not 30, 40. I meant
he
was a 40. I think I said he was 40 early on. That you're just like, you're not a young buck. He's not bad. He doesn't have an 8, but
I feel that way, yeah.
So 40, 15, 14, 13 in Wisdom.
Just because I feel targeted doesn't mean you're wrong.
I think, like, Charisma, I'm going to say is a 10. Not his dump stat, just because Charisma is not, like, he's not really good at talking, but Charisma is also at looks and attractiveness, and I think that he's been a soldier for many years. He's probably cut.
He lives in the desert. He's got that golden brown skin.
I think he's an attractive man, so I'm going to say that's why his charisma is a 10 based on his zeal, also just the normal zeal of his worldview. And then, of course, like I said, I think intelligence, not a dumb stat, but I think it was specifically, they don't train you. They don't want you to think for yourself.
History, because that involves history, investigation, nature, religion, and arcana. Yep. So that makes...
Yeah, he has no use for that, so he didn't train it. He doesn't have a high up. If he was, they pick the soldiers that don't have it.
Well, and like we mentioned in the post too, when you look at these numbers, like an 8 in intelligence doesn't mean your character is an idiot. That's like the normal layperson.
Yep.
So that's also another thing to just like, not you, I know you know this, Billy, but just like people creating characters, 8s don't mean that your character is garbage. 1 would be that they're...
Yeah. 6 would be bad. So like when you do the roll, you can get really low stats because you roll 3d6. So there's a bunch of different options, and we all talk about it in our episode. But if you were just to take like the original back in the day how you did it, and you roll 3d6 and that's your score, like 10 is your average roll, which is why 10 is average, plus 0. And so like 8 is just a little bit below like average adventure, not average person. But you could have like a 4 or a 5 in intelligence if you use those numbers. And it's happened before. I know people that play with that straight roll.
It's hardcore.
And it's a hardcore thing because you may get an 18, which is, it's basically almost impossible. But you could. But then you could also get a 3. An 18 is the same likelihood as getting a 3. So like if you get a 3 and you have to choose what stat is going to be it.
Why is that character being an adventurer? That's what you got to ask yourself.
Yeah, you put a 3 strength where you can't lift up more than like 7 pounds. You're just an old geezer.
Mark Twain, looking at you.
Yeah.
So we've got our deck. We got our ability scores. What's the next step? We're going to go into the skills next.
So I think, because he's a human, the variant, you get to improve 2 ability scores right off the bat. So I think that's what we're going to do. These are his base ability scores. And here's where I do kind of metagame. I usually choose to upgrade ones that are odd.
Is that because you get the bonus increase to your modifier?
Because you get the bonus increase to your modifier.
Metagamer, you.
It would make, it would also make sense that if you have to train out something, like you're just there, like having, because I will not increase these ability scores almost again ever, because I'll take feats. So like having a 15 strength and a 15 con wouldn't really be a benefit, because I'll never, like, unless I take a feat where it says add 1 to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I know we haven't done an episode on feats yet, but like taking feats doesn't mean you're completely neglecting your ability scores. There are feats that, and most of them do give you a benefit with the trade-off of just 1 point in that ability score.
Yeah. So and if that happens, it may take a couple feats for him to level up, so he may get the 15. But I'm just going to say, this is where I do kind of metagame, where I look at all those, and usually, like, because there's no racial, like, preference for humans, I'm going to say bump his Constitution to a 16 and bump his Wisdom to a 14, which makes sense, because as he's gotten older, he's getting hardier and he's getting smarter, and that makes sense to me. And not only, so it also works out really good, but like, he's not getting stronger as he goes. He hit his peak strength is behind him.
He's done. I will say, though, I like that he's become more survivable, because that is something our party desperately needs.
Yeah. And if he's defensive, that also makes sense, that having people with a bunch of Constitution, a phalanx, Constitution more important than strength, because stabbing someone with spear doesn't take a lot of strength. But like marching through the desert, carrying a bunch of weight, using a shield and blocking like a phalanx wall, if you have one person who breaks that phalanx wall, then the whole phalanx breaks. So that's why I think the focus is on defense. So that's what we're going to do. And then after that, now we're going to go to, so for humans, usually, like, then you put all the racial bonuses. We already talked about his feat. You also get a skill as a human. We will figure that out afterwards, because like I said, let's go through the skill options that you have based on your class, and let's do all the class stuff. And then afterwards, we select all those, then we'll put in one more anywhere, because
because you could also take the approach of like, this is the one of him that comes from him living in the Gorman Empire. Like, what skill did he gain from just doing that?
Yeah. So as a fighter, which on page 70 it is of the Player's Handbook,
2013 edition.
2014. I'm sure they paid different pages.
Who knows? Maybe Nafarada's made it in there. It's on page 15 now.
It probably is.
Page 72.
Yeah. So then we'll go through and I start at the top and I'll work my way down. The first thing is I'm going to do is his hit points at level 1. It's 10 per fighter level plus his Constitution. So his current hit points is 10 plus his Constitution modifier. He's 16, which is a +3. So he starts off level 1 at 13 health. Easy.
Not a bad sum.
No, not bad at all. So that's hit points taken care of. The proficiencies, all armors and shields. That makes sense. He uses the shield. He uses all armor. Weapons, simple weapons, martial weapons. So he's good with basically weapons. We don't have to worry about those skills for proficiency. Tools, none. He does have gaming device, but his background. Saving throws is strength and constitution, which makes sense. Those are the two ones I said were most important for a soldier. So I'm going to select strength and constitution on the highlight them on my Player's Handbook, the little dot, and then we're going to go through the next. This is what we're doing one by one. Skills, choose 2. So fighters don't get a lot of skills. So this is why it was important to wait until after. So his skills he could choose from are acrobatics, animal handling, garbage. We're not going to, he just doesn't handle animals as a soldier. Maybe if he was like a mounted
dog unit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
like, yeah.
mounted
Or,
horse rider.
or
yeah.
if he was mounted, if he was like a cavalier. So athletics, history, insight, intimidation, perception, and survival. So we'll think about based on his background. What do you think his most important skill is? I'll tell you. We can rule out the ones that he's not going to. He's not going to care about history because they're not going to train their soldiers history. He's not going to care about intimidation because it's not about him intimidating. So I would probably say it would be athletics and survival is probably the ones I'd lean for. Does anybody have any other
No,
thoughts?
that's what I was
Mark?
thinking too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
All right. So let's put those in here. So athletics. Well, guess what? Athletics was already because of a soldier. So now we have to think of a new one. That's why
acrobatics would be.
If he's a
I feel like
hoplite,
that would be connected to athletics.
Okay.
Maybe perhaps like training to swap positions with other people, or someone goes down, filling those gaps in the walls.
Yeah. You think that makes more sense than perception?
Well, yeah, perception.
It would be good, or insight and I don't see insight being like because he's not there to insight is being people, and he just doesn't. He's not focused on is this guy lying? Because that's not
perception would be a good thing to train any soldier with.
Yeah,
especially if they're all supposed to be looking the same direction and fighting as a cohesive unit, not as All
right,
seems
so
like that would be good.
Let's do perception and survival then. So those are the two that you get, and then I also have the one extra from being a human, and I think that we talked about. I think medicine is probably a thing that I could see him being as a soldier. You kind of just get skilled at. That he's got that his medic bag, his soldier has got some bandages and stuff. He's had to take care of other soldiers. They probably don't have a bunch of medics running around in the army just because people are maybe replaceable. So they don't worry about healing too many people that much. As dark as that seems, that makes sense. It's kind of like the Russian army in World War II. Who gave a shit? So we'll put those. So now his skills are athletics, investigation, medicine, persuasion, and survival. So those are the ones he has. He has all of his skills. He has all of his saving throws. So then now, and his stats. So we can finish up the rest of that the box. He's going to be level 5, which your proficiency bonus is +3, I believe, at level 5. Let's double check.
Yep.
And so everything that he has a dot, you just add 3 to. And then everything else you just use the score. So I'm not going to bore you by going one by one, but that is the next step. Is now that you have your stat blocks and you have your skills and your saving throws, which ones are trained, then you fill out that whole block, and now you have all your numbers there. That's very easy. For its equipment, we already talked about this beforehand. He has a shield, and he has a spear, and he has I think phalanx or hoplites had short swords, not long swords, just because with all this shield, you don't want this big ass long sword. So even though they do less damage, a spear and a short sword are both 1d6, not 1d8. So this is where you're sacrificing damage for story.
And I think that's okay.
Absolutely okay. There's a short sword. He's trained on a long sword, so why would you give him a short sword? Because that's what he would use with his fighting style. It is almost a guaranteed one less damage every single time, but that is where that is how I make my characters. And
the other thing too is he's a polearm sentinel master. If he's using a short sword, something's gone wrong. You know what I mean? That's not going to be necessarily his primary. But if in close quarters or whatever, that's what they would use. That's what he would have. That's why it's there. That's why you have daggers.
Yes.
As a backup. So it tracks.
Yeah. So that is the equipment that I'm going to give him. So as a phalanx with the defensive, what we think of as Roman heavy armor is not, but I would, he starts with chainmail, which is not heavy armor. But then we're going to think about being a soldier.
Wait, you're starting him with chainmail?
That's the equipment that you start with.
Oh, okay. So base AC of 16.
So we have the AC thing, a base AC of chainmail of 16. So, but he's level 5. We'll talk about it when we level up. But we'll talk about it right now. That's your level 1 equipment, but like he's 40 years old. He would have gotten different equipment. Do you think he would wear heavy armor? Or do you think he would stick with medium? So I will tell you what I see is that he has a dex bonus. So he's dexterous. And so being able to move efficiently, and especially with the fighting style, is probably more important than just being heavily armored. So I don't think he would wear heavy armor. I think he would wear medium armor, not just mechanically. He only has a dex bonus of 1, so wearing heavy armor would give him a higher AC. But I think the mobility would be more important to him than, he's not going to wear full plate clomping around, because a whole row of full plate people is just expensive for the army to have. He's not like a knight. He's not like a commander who's coming out on a horse in full armor. He's a Joe.
Well, if we're using the hoplite as inspiration, and I've just pulled up an image of them, it's pretty simple, like breastplate, shield, spear, helmet. So looking off of, and I know the hoplite doesn't have to be 1-for-1 in AOA, but just kind of looking at the spirit of that type of soldier, breastplate seems to be pretty appropriate. But it might also be fun to do a different take on that. I don't know.
Yeah,
because it's hot. It's in the desert. Do you want to be wearing a fucking plate of steel on your chest?
Yeah,
I don't know. But at the very bare minimum, I think breastplate is a solid choice.
Yeah. So the breastplate is medium armor of AC of 14.
Is it? I thought it was 14 plus, I think, your dex.
Yeah.
But you only have 1, so you'd be 15 at base AC,
so
right?
So that's actually less than the chainmail, which is heavy armor.
Yeah, 1 less than chainmail.
So that's what I'm saying. Is that? But I think his arms would have to be free. He doesn't want to wear heavy armor. I think medium armor for this fighter specifically, because his defense is not his armor; it's the shield.
Well, he's going to have a 17 with the shield.
Yeah, so which is fine. Which is an AC of 17 is not great.
Most time when you think plus of fighter, 3 to con.
Yeah, it is, but that's appropriate for I think what he is. So that's where you start not min-maxing. What armor can I do the best armor class?
And it's also when you kind of fast track him to level 5, did he get a set of really nice armor that is a breastplate, in his, that might help with that? Maybe it's not just a +1 breastplate, but maybe it's something cool.
Yep, I think that is definitely. I mean, everybody has magic items. He would probably have magic items at this point, just to make him more online with a 5th level character, and also just because he's got experience, and it would make sense. So I think
a breastplate of resistance would fucking make him a tank.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, so medium armor, half plate. Would he be wearing half plate? But he had disadvantage on stealth.
Breastplate, definitely makes sense for hoplite type character.
Yeah, so I don't know. That is the argument you can have. What do you guys think? So would he use breastplate or half plate? So half plate is, there'd be an argument to half plate because he would cover half of his, when you have a bunch of people with half plate and shields, it would be like an armored wall.
Yeah, I mean, the only argument I would make for that, because I'm on team breastplate, obviously, is just what you said, maybe doing a different take of this sort of Spartan-esque hoplite character, and just these are ones that don't focus on mobility as much. They're more of take inspiration from an armadillo and just like hunker down with heavier armor and that type of thing.
Yeah, and if you look at the weight, half plate is twice as heavy as breastplate. So for 1 extra AC, so a 5% extra chance to miss, basically.
Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, what are you seeing?
I feel like the breastplate makes sense to me. I think they would, just imagining that type of formation and everything. I feel like even moving on from the army, he'd still kind of do things the way that he used to. So even if he is out by himself, you might think that you would just get the best armor now that you're not part of a big unit. But I feel like if he's really if it's that much a part of him, then he might not be optimized armor wise, just because that's just the way things are and always have been in his training and whatnot.
That is the armor that they use, and that's the armor they give him. So in his mindset, that must be
that's a good choice. Yeah, and he's if you're proficient in something, even if you recognize it's not the absolute best thing that could be, you would still stay with what you're comfortable and good.
That's why film
stay within your own.
Stay with
stay within your realm of comfort.
Yep, I think you're spot on, Mark. I think I agree that for him, like the comfort of wearing the same type of armor he wore the entire time that he was a soldier, that's what he's accustomed to. That's what he's known, and that's what he's going to use. So so he's going to stick with the breastplate. So that's 14 plus his dex plus the shield, which gives him an overall armor of 17. I'll go through and do magic items later, so we won't have to worry about that because that'll take a while to pick which ones.
I also want to do just a quick shameless plug for our new D&D 5e armor class calculator on our armor class post.
Yes,
if you want to check it out for quick.
Do it because there's a lot of things that armor class. It's a lot of pluses and a lot of minuses, especially when you're fighting and you start having cover and half cover and 3/4 cover and using a shield, not using a shield, because you can, certain weapons are versatile and you can use a shield or not. So there's a lot of times that your armor class is never going to be the same the entire fight. It's going to change. And so having something like that where it's very easy, you just pull it up and okay, what the situation is. Okay, here it is. This is my armor right now. I agree with that. So as of right now, his armor class is 17. What is a human speed? Is 35, 30
feet.
His speed is 30. He didn't train anything, no feet for that extra. We're not worried about his attacks. We know what they are. We can add what the bonuses are. That's what you go through the next block. The attacks and spellcasting, he uses a spear, he uses a short sword. They're both D6s plus his strength, plus his attacks add his both proficiency. Worry about magic items later, but this is just with straight items there. We've done all of those. His hit dice, his languages. He speaks Gorman and he speaks Common. I don't know. We haven't decided what the other common language is, but I would assume it's a different language because it's a different country.
Harborese. We speak Harborese and Harborton.
Harborese, yeah, Harborton or
I guess it's not like an AON language
or whatever. What's the city is a country of
Trimblemore as well.
Trimblemore, so they probably speak Trimbolonian. I don't know. You guys think of a cool name for it? It would, there's a bunch of really weird. They don't always add exactly what we want. Like somebody from Glasgow is Glaswegian, which doesn't make any sense, but that's what they decided on. So like Trimblemore could be Trimblemegian.
Trimbolonian.
Yeah, Trimbolone. It could be anything, but so he speaks those two languages. We're just assuming Common is the language of Trimblemore, but he also speaks Gorman, which is the language from the country he's from. I don't think he speaks any other languages. I don't really even want to check to see if he gets any bonus languages because why else would he know another language? There's no reason for it. So even if he had the ability to, I'm not going to give it to him. Just he also knows Goblin because why not? Like no, this guy doesn't know Goblin. So
he could have actually. I could make a stretch of like he met some like wandering nomadic goblin clans and then had this connection to be able to talk to Xyzel. Like he knows more about goblins than Xyzel does.
Maybe. Like, yeah. So what
The
do?
goblins of the east.
Yeah. So I
That's
think that common in one other language is usually what they. I think I'll have to go back and check, but I may make some adjustments afterwards, just if I think it'd be cool to know one other language that's uncommon. But I think it'd be fun that he knows Gorman, nobody else knows Gorman, so he knows the language nobody else does. Gorman is his second language. So then, if you look at the character sheet, we've basically done everything except for the bottom right, which is the features and traits, which is what we already talked about that actually. We just copied the features and traits from Fighter. And from now we just would level up and add them all up. So we're just going to
and your feats too, right? Like those feats features that would go in there.
Yes. So we're going to go to Fighter. So then we're just going to level up the Fighter. So you look at the Fighter at second level, he gains an action surge. I'll just copy that down. Third level, first level, he's got his fighting style. We already decided, and then second wind. Write that down. Third level, he gains his martial archetype.
What did we decide for his fighting style?
Oh, one-handed. Oh no, shield.
Shield, perfect.
Yeah, protection. Because that's what it's about. When a creature other than you can see attacks a target other than you that's in 5 feet of you. So the guy next to you, he's a phalanx.
Protection makes total sense.
Sorry, I should have brought that up earlier. That was already like a one-handed. Even when I was talking about that, like you are protecting the guy next to you. So he is a protection fighter fighting style. Is at third level he gets a martial archetype, which is Hoplite, which is the phalanx that we decided. So he doesn't get the what did they
born
call
to
it?
saddle.
Yeah, he doesn't get born to saddle.
Swap that for the other in the samurai.
You could also make up. It might be fun to make up a hoplite specific one. Like if you are surrounded by one or more friendly companions, you get some kind of bonus or I don't know, like some kind of benefit from like fighting this way, or just take fighting spirit.
Yeah, so the fighting spirit, I was thinking about making it a pack tactics, which is what like goblins and wolves have.
Oh yeah,
where you are, if you are adjacent to another ally, you have advantage on your attack. That may be too powerful but that it would make sense. So I have to think about whether pack tactics is too powerful, giving him advantage. But I think that would work sense because there's not a lot of times that you can be right next to him in the front lines.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be using Wizard Claws will be using his familiar to grant help.
Yeah.
To like one or more, like either to Umrin or this character. But aside from that, I don't know. Because I'm looking at the fighting spirit and it seems, even though it's a resource that you expend until you you use this feature 3 times. So you get 3 resources, 3 charges. As a bonus action, you get advantage on all weapon attacks until the next turn. And you gain 5 temporary hit points, which increases and scales with your level.
Yeah, so I don't think it's more. I don't think pack tactics is more powerful than that, because like if I have pack tactics and Umrin needs to fight next to me for me to get advantage, then Umrin doesn't have advantage because normally we would flank, and so that's the kind of thing is that like you're giving up flanking to fight next to each other, like. Phalanxes don't fight flanking; they fight next to each other. So, I'll have to think about it. I think fighting spirit is probably makes more sense, just because.
Well, I feel like in the larger context, having an army that fights that way and each soldier's trained to have an advantage all the way down the line. Like, what if we run into a whole line of them and have to fight them?
Yeah. So
if that's how they work, then that would be a literal impenetrable.
Yeah. We have to fight a whole phalanx.
There'd be like 50 of them each.
We would not do that.
You can't get around.
Use Xyzel's silver tongue to get us out of that situation.
In the sense of balancing the overall world, I don't know if that makes a difference.
I like it. I think fighting spirit is a good call. We can change the name of it or whatever, because you can always change the name of things. But it makes sense because it is. it gives you the advantage. Because he's like, I would say that's what he had when he fought with the phalanx, but he doesn't fight with the phalanx anymore. He's kind of out on his own, so he doesn't rely on. He's more of like a one-man phalanx for people that don't have shields. So I think Fighting Spirit works. So I'm going to make him Fighting Spirit as his level 3 feature. So then if we go back to the fighter at level,
and you're adding his health too. His health updates.
Yeah, we're gonna. I don't roll. I just give them the bonus. So every single time he's getting 6 plus your Constitution modifier. So he's getting 8 more points. So he's leveling up 4 times 8. So he's getting 32 more. No, his Const is plus 3. So he's getting 9 every time. So 9 times 4, 27. So he's got a grand score of 40.
Yeah, we need someone with over.
Yeah, at level 5. And then, of course, he doesn't get his ability score improvement at level 4 because we took the
one
other
of the feats. Yeah.
And at 5th level, he gets extra attack, which is easy enough. That's it. He is like, on paper, he is done. We just made a character.
He doesn't have a name.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I reveal later.
Yeah, that's going to be the reveal. Is that
so you do have a name?
I do have a name planned on him. So yeah, name is usually with the background. I kind of have like a name. Where is he from? So I have a name planned. He will be revealed. I still want a little bit of like, so when the next guy you say, like, if we say, oh, his name is Tom Jones, like you run into somebody and I'm like, oh, this is Tom Jones. You're like, oh, he was a fighter. He's like, we
can meet him without knowing that it's him.
You probably will know exactly when you meet him. It's like, oh, he's a fighter and he's got medium armor and a shield and a spear. You're like,
and he speaks with this weird Gorman accent.
He speaks with a weird Gorman accent. You're like, I wonder who this guy could be. So that is, I think that's everything. His alignment is the last thing that we should have done. I usually do alignment and background. So there's a lot of. I think.
Well, you chose his traits. They're tied to alignment, right?
Yeah. So the trait that he did is greater good is good aligned. So I think he's going to be on the top half of the square. He's going to be good.
I feel like if you're in the military, you're also going to shift bias toward a lawful mindset.
I would think
so. Yeah. Orders are yes. So he is a paladin without magic. That's what I was leading. He is stuck in his ways, have to follow all laws, and he's good. So he is a lawful good.
That makes sense.
Idealistic fighter. I think that you're spot on. I was gonna say, like, would it be true? Would it be like neutral good? But I think you're right. With the military, orders are to be followed unquestioningly.
Like, the military law is your law. Like, even though there's laws that affect civilians, those laws don't apply to you. The military laws apply.
So I think that he is definitely lawful good, LG, which is going to be very interesting when we play. I think, Mark, your character is neutral good, or are you chaotic good?
I think he might have been chaotic good, actually.
Yeah, he's like right on that cusp that you could either way. Lord Wizard Claus
he's morally ambivalent.
Yeah, as I was about to say, he could be even like true neutral. Like he's not lawful or he's not chaotic. I'd maybe even say chaotic neutral, but in like a not like, I don't know.
He's not like actively malicious.
Yeah, he's not actively malicious. He just doesn't care.
Yeah.
He's like chaotic because he doesn't believe in laws because they don't affect. So that's like the opposite of. It's not that he's chaotic. He's just law intolerant.
Yeah, laws. They just don't make sense to him. Like,
don't make any sense to him. Yeah. So he's not like the Joker, or he's not like this kind, like Rogue, where his whole thing is like fuck the laws because I hate laws. He's just like he just ignores the laws.
Well, it's like why have this law that says I can't cross the street when I can just magically cross the street? Or like he just doesn't believe in them.
Laws don't apply to him. So like he's like he's a lawful. He just does not acknowledge that laws apply to him. So I think that's good.
It'll be interesting for these two characters to interact then too, because like that's a chance for him to like learn from that and grow. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a nice addition, I think.
Yeah, I think this is gonna be a fun character that will add to the party.
I hope we see them soon.
You hopefully will see them soon. I don't know. We'll see how long into the adventure. I always assume that you're going to get further than you do, just because 2 pages of text for me is like, oh, we'll definitely get through this, but like, no, always takes longer than I thought. But was there anything else that we missed? Oh, so then we can specifically talk about his knives, if we wanted to, real quick. So does everybody have any like ideas for like knives? So I think for sure his like he still has an affiliation for like the Gorman Empire. So even though he's not there right now, he loves the Gorman Empire, and they are infallible. Everything they've ever done is perfect. So there are some knives in there that he is unquestioningly
Why did he leave?
loyal.
That's what I would want to know. Like, what knife forced him to leave? Like, because it might be interesting if he has this devout love for his country, but he can't return.
That is a good question. So I think maybe we can put that knife in there. I haven't developed it yet, but I think that's a good like a starting knife. Is that like he can't like because if he loves the Gorman Empire that much, why is he not there? That's a good question, and that's a good story arc that you could figure out. Maybe he won't tell you. Maybe,
I'm thinking like some Ned Stark honor type shit.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know. I mean, I've been thinking about how to get a guy in the Gorman Empire down here. But yeah,
that's an exile. That would make sense.
Oh, so what do you think is like based on his personality is like a knife that we could use like in his background or something from history that you could use to bring up? What do you think?
I mean, like I imagine after a life of being in the military, especially of it being prescribed to you in like that kind of culture, that he probably has some sort of feelings as to whether he is a leader or not. That's kind of an interesting thing if he's meant to be in this group of people who are all working as one. It will be interesting to figure out why he's not there anymore, but also just kind of like, so does he see himself as a follower then? But he's such a strong soldier, I could see some conflict there. He knows what to do, but at the same time he doesn't think of himself as the full authority because he's not a general or anything like that.
When your place in the world was prescribed to you and you no longer have that place in the world, what is your new place in the world? Like, what are you?
If your job is your, personality or whatever, then
your identity is, if you've been told this is your identity at 16, you are a soldier, your job is to protect the Gorman Empire, this is what you do. And now is it an identity crisis? Does he know who he is? Does he know what's his purpose? What is his plan? What is his goal in life?
I think that mixes very well with some of the other things we have going on. The cat who was brought to a level, beyond comprehension. Zeisel's, being kind of prescribed the life he has because of his appearance and race or species. And like Umran's kind of outsider thing.
I think Umran and this character will get along really well too.
Probably.
They'll probably have like an anchor of normalcy to.
Yeah, like, look at these fucking weirdos.
See what they have to deal with.
Yeah, so I have one other one that I think would be interesting to hash out. That like in the course of the adventure or the course of whatever he's joining or accompanying the party, if the goals of the party, he's all about the greater good. And when he's in a party, he's loyal to that party because that is his greater good. If the goals of the party and of the Gorman Empire do not align, where is his loyalty? Is it to the Gorman Empire, even though he may be outcast or ostracized?
That's a good
Like,
question.
if doing something for the or is that like, oh well, this party could be sacrificed? Like, not am I sacrificing myself, but I'm sacrificing the party for the greater good of the Gorman Empire. Like,
Yeah.
And how would your party feel if you did that? It's like, oh, I'm sorry, guys, but we are
Interesting.
sorry
Cool.
ended this way. We had a good run, but now we got to die, or we have to charge into impossible odds, or I don't know what else would be something that he would do.
Oh, something will come up eventually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or
That's
something will
the
come
fun
up.
thing about planting these knives or forging these knives is like you don't know.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I think
like
that I think that'd be interesting. Do we miss anything going down the list of character creation besides the obvious things, which is I'm not going to tell you his name. When we can talk about what he looks like, we already know what he looks like. He's
Handsome AF.
Handsome AF. He's tanned. I'm going to say that he has.
Can we just say that he's what's his name? In Troy, Brad Pitt.
Yeah,
Can we just say Brad Pitt from Troy?
The long golden hair. Oh, he has a character that I am based on. So
okay, then we'll use that.
Who he looks like, and it's funny. I'm thinking you'll figure it out eventually, but I have a character that I just stole a face from a well-known celebrity, and that is how he looks now. I think it's easier to describe people like he is. Like, if we were in a movie, he'd be played by this character. It's just so you guys get, like, in your head, you get an image of, especially when it's like humans. Like,
are you going to share this in chat, or are you going to wait?
It could be a reveal with the name.
It'll be a reveal with the name.
Okay, all right.
Because I think that's
all right.
And when I describe him, I think you may get it. But I don't know if the name alone probably won't do it. But like when I describe him and you meet him, I'm just say, oh, he kind of looks like this guy. He looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. No,
wait.
But it's not Arnold Schwarzenegger.
It is absolutely not Arnold. That'd be hilarious if you walk up. It's Rainier Wolfcastle from The Simpsons.
Nice.
The goggles, they do nothing.
They do nothing.
Do nothing. Yeah, so I think
Cool.
So that's what is funny is that I just one other thing that I don't want to be like generically racist against people that were born, people live in, sand and so he is not Middle Eastern. He is not Indian. He is not Pakistani. He is not Saharan.
So
his
like we're not using
the language.
Sorry, what it sounds like is we're not necessarily using our real world, not stereotypes, but cultural descriptors of certain types of areas or demographics in AOI.
I get so tired that you just like, oh, this is their version of the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's Middle Eastern. No, that's bullshit. I think that's lazy. Yeah, and if you haven't figured it out, the Gorman Empire is German. If you couldn't tell by the name of the cities, so he speaks with a German accent, which is why I kind of did the Wiener.
Oh, I'm hoping it's like a David Hasselhoff.
Yeah. So so the Gorman Empire is German. I kind of modeled it after. So here's my idea of. I know we've done with character creation, but hop into how I envision Aoa. I get very annoyed that everybody just assumes British accents are everything, like Game of Thrones. Oh, it's a fantasy world. Everybody's got a British accent. Oh, it's Rome. This is literally Italy. British accent. Like, why? Why would the people in Rome have a British accent? It's just because in our brain, like, oh, they're classy and high and it's fantasy, so it's British accent. I'm like, no, like medieval times was all over Europe, not just in England. And if you've listened to like the British accent back then, it is not like high class. No, right. Like somebody did like a reading of William Shakespeare in like the accent at the time, and it is fucking funny. It
I
is.
haven't seen that.
It's just crazy. So I've decided that like, and I don't like everybody. Oh well, like the everybody's got to, like the elves are highborn, so they're British aristocracy. Screw that. So the elves think that they're better than everybody else. They're very fancy boys. So
Are they Guidos?
they're French.
Why
Why wouldn't they be French? That's why if you didn't get that guy who was talking in my French accent, elves are French.
He was.
That makes sense.
That's a problem.
Yeah, elves are French and
English what?
Italian. Like they are the Romance language. Elves.
Nice.
And humans are the Germanic languages, which are like English, German. You haven't seen a Scandinavian yet, but maybe you will. And then like this, it's too easy to make the dwarf Scottish, even though that's a Germanic, because it's fun. Having like a dwarf with like an Indian accent would just be weird.
Yeah, it's just like Harborton seems to go like slightly New Jersey.
Yeah,
Most
well
of the
that's
denizens there.
well it's English, because English is a Germanic language. So like they are Harborton is
the Hobbiton draw.
Yeah, it's the United States. Harborton is United States. You may see some like Southern accents, and Norman Empire is Germany. Like they have, the humans evolved like using Germanic languages. So maybe the other, German, Anglo-Saxon. You may have like Scandinavian.
Wait, did you for the AO world map? Did you just turn like United States sideways?
Oh,
like
Eric
Eric
said, it look like
or South America, just turn that shit sideways.
No, maybe I would have been easier. Yeah, it's just like I just got tired of everybody in fantasy being in British. It's one of my biggest pet peeves.
Big trope.
It's just any fantasy is British. Anything like fancy is British. Like it's just so ingrained in our head. But that's why I think it's like Jersey, and it'll save me from having to do a lot of accents, because if it's in
accents you can actually do, like
like I can kind of do a German accent, I can do French, I can do a British, but like I don't. Everybody doesn't have to be British accent. When I'm just doing somebody in Harborton, I can just speak with a regular, like just change my pitch a little bit, speak a little bit like this. But I don't have to worry about like changing my vowel sounds, because there's like in a fantasy world, somebody speaking like Winston Churchill is just as likely as somebody speaking like Snooki.
Yeah, and it's just it's also like every single person. Like you go to the bum on the corner asking for, "Hello, dear sir, may I trouble you for a quid?"
Yes, exactly. Like I'm so tired of that. And then people are like, "Oh, well, it's like, oh, it's the fantasy Middle East, so they're definitely Middle Eastern, And then they have Middle Eastern thing. Oh, that's where this, and they're also less than, and it's worse than they're not, it's like Anglo European Eurocentric, and then like, if we travel across the continent, oh, it's some Oriental, which is like, you can't, but that's like we can't say it anymore. Like, oh, it's so mystical and the far east, like, we've removed the language from our vocabulary, which is absolutely amazing, because unless it's even ramen it's not Oriental flavored anymore, it's soy sauce, because it's always been soy sauce flavored ramen. But we call it Oriental because it's mystical. It's soy sauce.
That's what it said in the package, especially
it said Oriental. But that's the thing, is Oriental is a rug or ramen, that's it. It's not like, but like we still have that mentality of like the Far East, like, oh, they have like the Far East like something mystical, and the medicine and the culture. It's like it's very weird to me. But like I want to go, like, you get on a ship and you travel halfway across the ocean and you get off, and it's just like, some guy speaking like Swedish fish. Yeah.
Oh no, you want to run my wares.
I can't. I don't want to do this. But yeah, like, why would he immediately be speaking like a Japanese accent? Just because like you travel across the ocean. I don't know.
It's
I get
interesting
tired
how those things, like, you have to kind of consider these different factors, and
like,
especially in world building, where
they're just ingrained in our head that like the
it's just more fun to do something different too.
Yeah, that the default correct culture is European. I mean that's ingrained in our head.
Wants you to believe.
Well, but that is those like, and we don't want to get political on here, but we're gonna, like, that is that like the subtle superiority of like Eastern culture, is that like this is the best, it's fantasy, the default culture is our culture. Everything else is a variety, is like different, but it's not as good. It's a little weird. Like, no, fuck that. The default culture is whatever we make it. And then like the weird culture is European German.
And it can be hard to like when you are kind of like locked into a certain framework or mindset to like go outside of that. So it'll be fun to kind of try and challenge that more.
Yeah. So I think that I would like if everybody has any other ideas like that, like, because it's easier to like our brain, we want to relate something to something. Oh, it's like this, because it's hard to make up something from scratch. So even like when we make up something from scratch, what we're doing is we're taking parts of other things that we already know and compiling them into something, an amalgam, but it's, we didn't reinvent anything really. We're just moving things. But yeah, we have like our biases of what is right and what is wrong and what is good and what is bad and what is normal and what is abnormal. So I would absolutely love if you guys would think about this and, like I said, the world building, like.
Well, it'll be fun because now we have a character coming from a region that we've not experienced yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Lord Wizard Claws really hasn't been outside of Festandia's Manor and, Harborton, really.
Yeah.
So I think being able to like do that, what you just said, via your character and the interactions with them, and being able to kind of build on this together as like we can ask your character questions about it and kind of define the culture in that part of the world.
Yeah, that'd be
that
cool.
way.
Yeah, I think that is good. And I don't want to just like, introduce the culture. Like this is like, oh, your characters don't know it so that you guys don't have any like agency over making it. Just because your characters don't know it doesn't mean that, Mark and Chris can't think like, oh, I think it'd be really cool if, this culture that we just ran across had this. And I think it would be, I haven't seen this much. This is a good idea. Please tell me.
Hopefully they're cat worshipping peoples.
Yeah. So have to be.
Think about that, like those kind of
tropes,
but
I'll put some thought into that.
Yeah, I don't want you to think that like just because your characters are discovering this world that you are discovering it, that all the world that I'm creating, because I still want us to be discovered. Like, so we have that island on the north of the map called Milling. I have not even started to conceptualize it. If you guys have any idea of like just tell me like, hey, like we haven't run into it, but I would think that Milling would be really cool. It's offset. It's by itself. It's it's this. It's kind of like a like tell me what do you think that Milling culture would be. We don't just because we haven't run into it doesn't mean that it hasn't. We could run into a shopkeeper that I come from Milling, so this is like what it is. We could just you could see somebody that's like, oh, I'm from there, and here's this. So it.
As long as it's not a frozen island where werewolves live, that's fine. That's
like
it's thought into that.
Yeah, like, is it like it's island up north and isolated? It's that's just like it's easy to say. Oh, that's the Britain. I'm like, no, the Britain is. I don't want that to be the Britain. Maybe that island,
stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's probably enough for a character creation episode. Thanks for like walking us through that exercise, Bill, and like putting sort of what we've talked about into practice. I think just walking through that as an exercise was fun. And then like, I think this is one of the first times we've done some like group character creation together. So it was fun to kind of help shape and shift and mold the character as we went through it.
Yeah, it definitely helps me because like I said, I had an idea of what I wanted, but like, the nuts and bolts I always do afterwards. And I kind of just throw things together that I think fit, but like, I really like getting second opinions because like I could make the creator like actually like after I've already created them, I've played them for a bunch of episodes. You're like, wouldn't it make more sense if he did this instead? And I'm like, oh shit, yeah. How do I retcon that? Like,
yeah, and this is like a little mini zero session since you're creating a character, it already into the campaign of being able to workshop it as we go through. So that's really cool.
Yeah. So this will be the character that I would when we. I would if we get an independent DM and then we can play together. This would be the character that I would play.
Nice.
I was thinking, it'd be a cool NPC, but also like he's thought out enough, and I would like to see more interactions with him. So I think he'll be popping in and out.
Let's do it.
Can't wait. And if you have like, I also like I said, if you wanted to make characters. because if you want to have like build a stable of characters that you could like hip and come in and out, and you're like, oh, I'm kind of tired of doing this. I really want to play that samurai. I want to make a samurai character or something like that. Make them, and then we can do it communally, or you could just make them and then we could just change it out, like swap it out in episodes or all that other stuff.
I want to get a couple adventures with Wizard Claws under my belt first, but
for sure. Yeah, they're good characters. We haven't really explored much of them, but like you never want to have the thing where you're like tired of, like I want my character to die so I can make a new character. Like you don't want to have character fatigue where like you're kind of bored with you. If you're ever bored with your character, let me know before you want to play a new character, and we'll maybe come up with that one of those knives happens. Yeah. And then the whole dynamic changes, because you never want to, if you're ever bored or you don't think your character has enough growth, let me know, and let your DM know if you're playing a different game, because you should never, it's a game. You should never be bored.
Yeah.
If you don't think your character is interesting enough, don't wait for the character to die. Make them interesting.
Yeah, and there's tons of resources both on the internet and +1togaming.com. Yep. So you can kind of make those characters, bring them to life, bring more storytelling elements, more collaborative elements in there to have it fun. So I think that's probably it for this week. I'll roll that outro. That's it for this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, and head over to +1togaming.com for more live discussions, actual plays, character creation tips, and more. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.